Hi, and welcome to The Real Deal with Deb. Being born into dysfunctional generational trauma, I know too well the effects it can have in all the different areas of our life. So I decided to create a space to support women of all ages where we can grow together while sharing personal and entrepreneurial lessons learned through authentic connection, love, and laughter. After 30 plus years of building a successful business as a RE/MAX realtor while studying emotional intelligence skills throughout my career and life, I now want to help support other women and empower them to tap into their own emotional intelligence skills. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for dropping by. I'm so excited today to have my guest, Paris Cutler, all the way from Australia. Paris, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And that's why it's so dark, because it's about 7:30 a.m. here. So I apologize for the lighting.
Oh, well, you look amazing. 7:30 in the morning, I would look like something a cat just drank in. So you look great. I
Thanks.
just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. As you know, again, it's about women supporting women. And you, my friend, are such an inspirational woman. I say, let's just
Oh,
jump right into this conversation, and you can share some of your gold nuggets.
yeah.
First off, Paris, I'd like to know a little bit about your background as far as where were you born, and if you can share one person that comes to mind, a mentor, a teacher, someone that really influenced you in your younger years, who would it be and why?
I think my dad, because one of the things I've noticed about me, I grew up in Sydney. I'm a Sydney girl through and through in Australia. And I grew up out in the suburbs, out in the burbs, in a time, so the 1970s and 80s, where there was no such thing as entrepreneurship. There was just kind of owning a shop. We didn't talk about it. And I didn't have great marks. I was just average in every single way except one. My dad believed in me. So when I said I want to go and become a stockbroker, back then only kids from private schools or in networks got into that industry. And dad sat down and said, let's write a CV together, I'll help you. And so I've now recognized that a lot of the limiting beliefs that I don't have, that other women have, are because I had a father that was constantly, yeah, sure, you can do that. And so that's something I like to share with people because it can have a profound impact on women, particularly, and our self belief.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think too, you've made um a really great point on the power of, it's great women supporting women, and we all know what it's like to be a woman and, kind of the obstacles that we face. But to have that kind of support from your father, what a special gift that is, and that stays with you all your life. So,
Oh, yeah,
a great
100%.
reminder.
So, I mean, I'm doing the same thing now as a global ambassador for Zadazi, which is a venture capital based in America. And it's founded by a man for women. And he happens to be a really good friend of mine. And it's got a slight twist. So it offers some wonderful things like Pathway into it, of course, Pathway for Mindset. And then we do like networking, wraparound care. And we also do venture capital for all sorts of women's businesses, helping with self doubt and all of that. But the thing with Zadazi that has a twist is that we work with men, especially powerful men. So Brad, the man who founded it, is a very, very successful entrepreneur in getting them to advocate for us. So that's the kind of thing that I'd like to share with women. It's not just women supporting women. We need great men advocating for us as well, particularly when it comes to business, particularly when it comes to positions of authority and power like board membership. We do need that. And so there's lots of great men out there now doing that. And I include them as part of my female circle.
That's no, you know what? That's a wonderful share. Again, perspective is everything. And as much as, I'm doing my podcast to support and honor women and coming together and learning from one another and just being able to be in a safe space where we can be authentically ourselves, right?
because we wear many hats, women. We really do, as you know. So I
Oh my
really
gosh.
appreciate that you're sharing that, there are men out there that are,
Yeah.
involved in supporting women, that are changing the trajectory of what hasn't been there so strongly in the past. So it's really great to hear that things are shifting. So thank you very much for sharing that, Paris. Now, I want to jump into a little bit about your entrepreneur journey, I guess is a good
Yeah.
way to put it. You left the corporate world, and I'm not sure what you did, but you can share that with us, in 2003, and you bought, of all things, a cake business. So
Yeah.
Planet Cake, like, I've got to ask you, that's a big leap. That's a huge change from being in the corporate world. I want to know what made you, want to make that decision. And, you owned the business for many years. And also, can I say, you did a television show that was quite popular.
Mhm.
Please share, how did you get into buying a cake business, and what did you love about it, and what did you learn?
Okay, so I'll keep this quick because it's a big story, but
Mhm.
probably like a lot of people, I had achieved what society thought were great, achievements for an alpha. So first of all, I got into stockbroking. I was on the trading floor, and then I went and did a law degree, and I did all the things that were supposed to make you happy that society would approve of, or in particular that my parents would approve of. And I just wasn't happy. I was just inside, big off glamorous office buildings, dreaming about flowers and dreaming about other things. And I just recognized I really wanted to run a business. I had big dreams, I had big ideas, and they just couldn't be heard in a corporate environment. And so I tried to find something that I could invent. That was my original thing, because back then to have a business, you had to invent liquid paper or and then I heard of Richard Branson, and I loved Anita Roddick. She was just like, she's my idol still to this day, about developing a brand. So taking an ordinary product and creating a magnificent brand around it. So you can go into a saturated market. That's now called blue ocean strategy, going into a saturated market and creating a brand that appeals to fans there that are not being heard. But back then it was just kind of, I saw two people doing it. So I was looking for a business that hadn't been properly developed or capitalized yet. There was a niche there. And during the course of my first wedding, I've had a few. No, I haven't. Just a couple. And during the course of my first wedding, I got this cake, and it was from the best cake shop in Sydney, and it was awful. And I thought, this is it, because I could see what was happening in America with Martha Stewart. And I thought, wealthy people and corporates in Australia are not getting the service they want or the product they want. And so I went along and bought a small cake shop, and it had one person in it. You couldn't swing a cat. It was literally so tiny that you had to pass the phone along because you couldn't move. And I thought, I had this huge dream. This is going to be like the Virgin of cakes. I'm going to build this out so big, this brand. And that was the pathway I took. So it took a lot longer than I thought. It required a lot more work than I thought. I mean, I had always worked hard. I had no idea how hard hospitality would be. And instead of going to the food world and the chef world, which I'd seen a lot of other cake makers do, I went to the fashion world. And then within 4 years, we were making cakes for Lady Gaga, Rihanna. We did Nicole Kidman's birthday cake. Katy Perry, all of those guys, everybody that came to Australia would get a cake from us, and we flew them to celebrities overseas. Had published 5 cake decorating books. We had the largest cake decorating school in the Southern Hemisphere, over 7,000 students, and our own TV show. And no one thought I could do it with cakes. Like when I went and bought that cake shop, everybody in the corporate world howled with laughter. And there was so many times I doubted myself and thought I was mad. But whatever you're passionate about, if you're passionate about, you can make it really work. So that's the lesson there.
You know what? Thank you for sharing all that, because it just kind of highlights, we all have vision. And
Mm.
I think that when, the big part of your vision was dream big, you know, like you said, you bought a small, very small beginnings of a cake shop, but you had a big vision for it, and you knew that it was going to take some time and work. And although it took much more time and much more effort than you anticipated, I'm sure the fulfillment that you gained from it was huge. You know, so there's no easy way to build that kind of success in a business. You've got to put the time, the effort, and have the vision for it. So thank you. That's a wonderful advice for any young entrepreneur that's listening. I have to ask you though, because you mentioned about a school. How did you get on track to, I think we're going to open up a school and have 7,000 students. How did that come about?
Oh, this is probably it's a very juicy story, and it's probably a great insight for everybody. What I don't do as an entrepreneur is I don't hide the bad times. A lot of people glamorize entrepreneurship and they get up there and they're multimillionaires, and it can make everybody feel like, wow, I'm just failing here. Actually, behind every single one of them is usually bankruptcy or close to bankruptcy and lots of, tough times. The best idea for my business came out of the global financial crisis. So I had just expanded Planet Cake. I'd bought a big new factory. I'd expanded my staff by 25%. I'd invested heaps, and I had a huge pipeline of cakes coming through because I'd been really focused on sales. And now was the time that I was due to write my first book. I got a publishing deal, and I thought, this is great. Finally got the business to the point I'm going to just take some time off, write this book. This is wonderful. GFC hit August 2008. I'll never forget it. And the phone rang solid for 3 weeks, cancelling every single order in the business for months ahead. And these weren't just any orders. Just to explain to your audience, the average cake price was about $800. And, we go up to $5,000 a cake. So these were really high-end luxury cakes with all the kind of, flown in by helicopter for people like Beck and Leighton Hewitt and all of that. So it was an absolute disaster, and there was nothing coming in. I just, I say to everybody, and it's the absolute truth, I lived on gastro stop for 8 months. So I had to cut all the staff that I had just hired, which is one of the most awful things I'd ever done. I had to work in the business 7 days a week, and I was on deadline for this book, so I was writing it every night. I was having arguments with my husband at the time because he was so stressed financially, he couldn't handle it. So it put an enormous strain on my marriage. And I was literally going week to week, just thinking, how am I going to pay wages? How can I keep the doors open? It was kind of like that. I had no assets. I couldn't take out a loan. I didn't know when the global financial crisis would end. And so it came to the point where I thought, I'm going to have to negotiate the rent. So I went to my landlord, who was a very, very wealthy man, and I explained the situation. And I was so desperate, I offered him 30% of my business just to either invest in my business or give me a grace period of 6 months on the rent, because, I thought my business was worth it. And he said to me, Paris, I wouldn't invest in your business. It's an absolute dog. And I just felt my guts fall out and my heart just broke. Like, at that point, I was so stressed and tired. I thought, I can't take anymore. This is my last shot. And he said, but I will give you a piece of entrepreneurial advice. And I thought, well, what's that going to do? Like, I'm up against the wall. And I stood there and I took it. I think if I was a man, I might have just got really offended and huffed out. Like, I felt really offended, but I just kind of, all right, okay. And he said, what is something in your business that is selling really well at the moment? Well, it definitely wasn't cakes. And I said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, just one thing that you're not struggling to sell. I said, well, we've got these little cake courses on Saturdays for mums to teach them how to make birthday cakes. That's not our business. Like, that's not. He said, do you struggle to sell them? I said, no, they fill out. He said, how much are you charging? I said, $200. He said, that's your business. Double the price. That's your business. I just raced back to my shop, my factory. I changed everything. I converted it into 2 classrooms. I changed all my branding. I marketed courses, and within 6 months, we literally were going from $500,000 turnover to $2 million turnover, and eventually it was turning over $6 to $7 million a year. it ended up being the biggest revenue driver in my whole business. And the lesson in that is I was so fixated on my product and so in love with it, I couldn't see the woods for the trees, and I wasn't actually seeing what was really profitable in my business. And,
You know what?
it ended up being courses.
Yeah, and that is such a valuable share, Paris, because you're right. Sometimes we get so focused on what we
Yeah.
think because we want it, that direction on where to go in our business. But as you so well said, sometimes it's the least unexpected avenues that can take us to our biggest, highest heights, if I could say that. So great share about, don't get so focused on it's got to be a certain way, this is how it's going to be more, well, you know what, this is where we're going to start, and then we're going to see. So that is, like, in itself such a valuable share, Paris. Thank you for sharing that, and
You're welcome.
congratulations on all your success. I mean, number one, I can't imagine paying $500 up to $5,000 for a cake. But you know what? You made an interesting point there, because you saw a need at that time. There was a need for that. There was an empty space there. So you took advantage of that opportunity. Now, although it didn't last because of, like you said, things happen in the economy and that, it's such a wise lesson, though, to share with us that, as much as you feel like you're depleted, you want to give up, oh, I can't do this, what am I going to do? You feel like, hey, this is it. Thankfully, someone gave you some insight of, wait a minute, it's not over till it's over, and relook at what you're doing and what is making you money that can continue to grow. So wonderful share, Paris. Thank you so much. Okay, so you have gone and done so much in your life. The 5 books, may I say, that you wrote.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote one, and you know what? I thought, oh my God, I couldn't even read it after it was, done, just because I just didn't want to, I know the process and the time that's involved in that. So God bless you. Now, your books, all 5, were they all 5 about cakes? Or
yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know that.
Believe me, I did get over cakes way before everybody else got over it. But I mean, when people say you can't make money out of books, probably the next books I won't make money out of. But if I want to give anyone any tips, beginner how-to books, you can make a lot of money out of. So the first books, they were translated into 7 languages, including like Vietnamese, and they just went, and anything like a hobby or anything like that usually does really well. So 5 books, it was a great experience. It was great marketing for the business. The next, I'm writing a book now that's leadership lessons from my, entrepreneurial years. And it's the type of book I wanted every time I was in crisis with my business. So it's full of really terrible stories of awful things that happened and like really bizarre things that happened, and wisdom lessons from all of it, because I think that we just glamorize ourselves way too much. Like some of the stories I hear, it's like, really, come on now, I've been in business for 30 years.
Let's spill the beans, so to speak. You know what a great point, though, to share with us, that being authentic and real is, transparency is everything. Okay, it is. And I think that we crave that more so these days than ever. And I really appreciate the fact that, number one, I can't wait to read the book. Number 2, that, you're sharing lessons learned and the failures that come along before we see success. And I think a lot of us, like you said, a lot of people don't talk about that. They a little bit like, oopsie doopsie, I did, something happened here, something didn't happen here. But it takes a lot of failures sometimes before we succeed. Right. And I can't wait to read the book. I know it's going to be really interesting and full of great tips on determination and not to give up, resilience. Let's be honest, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. But
Well,
if
yeah,
you
it's
get if
not.
you get in the right mindset and you're excited and passionate as you share about what you're doing, the sky's the limit, and you are proof of that, my friend. You
Thank
you,
you.
you built a cake empire business with a school. Now, look where you are now. You're continually pivoting, but yet using all that you've learned from your past experiences, businesses, etc., into your next journey. And I love that. I really do. And I thank you for sharing that so that other women are understanding that we all have something to bring to the table,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
like let's embrace and celebrate that instead of thinking, oh, me, I couldn't possibly, because we can. And you are a prime example of that.
Well, I think, well, thank you. I also think the stats back us up. So I'll finish with you on this as one of my last comments.
Yep.
Zadazi is the company I'm an ambassador for, is investing in women, not just because Brad thinks that that's a nice thing to do because he has 2 daughters and friends like me. He's doing it because the stats prove that investing in female business founded and run businesses actually gets better returns for investors. That's a fact. The
Wow.
stats are in. And so there is a larger appetite for investors to invest in female businesses. And we know this because women tend to be long-term thinkers. They have less staff churn because they're better managers in terms of people. And they often are better at managing budgets and strategy. There's less risk and more kind of sustainable growth. And so I just want to kind of leave everybody with that, because it's really affirming for me that we don't just think this ourselves, that we actually have some metrics to back it up. So that's exciting.
That is exciting. And I am so happy for you and your next new journey. And
Thank you.
you so much, Paris, for sharing all that you've shared. Really insightful information. I've learned even more, and I've known you for a while now, about your journey and how determination and pivoting into something that we least expect can have the greatest results. So thank you again so much for sharing your time. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the viewers and the listeners for dropping in and spending some time with us. Until next time, we're keeping it real.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for taking some time out of your day to spend it with me. If there's a topic you'd like me to discuss, please reach out at therealdealwithdeb@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you left me a review. And as always, keeping it real. Until next time.